And so, without any further ado, let's cue the music and start that word chat.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to that word chat. So glad to see a nice big crowd in the room today. And Amy J Schneider, our friend who's been on the show before, back in our first summer with the Quad. Her group of edit buddies. I guess it's not exactly I don't know what it is. We had the show. I don't know if we ever established what the Quad is, but it's a group of people who support each other. And Amy, now we brought her back because we're so excited. Amy has written the Chicago Guide to Copyediting Fiction. I have it right here. You're next to the F Word by Jesse Scheidler.
Very nice. I'm honored.
Chicago Guide to Copyediting Fiction. So congratulations. What we were talking a little bit before we came out here about how crazy busy you are. Are you having fun with the sort of the book tour, the book promotions and stuff like that?
Well, it kind of came out of left field because the official release date, as you may know, is this Friday, March 10th. And so
really?
I thought, well,
no, I did not know that.
Yeah, the official release date. If you go to Amazon, that's what it says. You have it. Well, I bet I know how you got it. You ordered it directly from the press.
No, I ordered it from my local bookstore, Gramercy Books.
Interesting.
And it came in a few days ago. Yeah. Now I did ask for one from the press, but they haven't sent it to me yet.
Wow. So this is news to me. So anyway, what happened was I got a notification in early February saying that I got a notification that my author copies were shipping. So I'm like, yay, I'll finally have them in my hands. Huh? And I got my copy and I posted about it. And all of a sudden people start posting that they're getting their shipping notices and they've got their books in hand. I'm like, wait a minute, why are they coming out already? Is that supposed to come for another month? Yeah. And then people are posting about it, and then all of a sudden, oh yeah, we're so excited, and they started posting reviews, and then all of a sudden my email just became this fire hose of my messages and my social media just became this thing of, well, can you be on our show? Can you write us an article? Can you come and speak to our group? Can you do this? Can you do that? And it's great. I mean, I love it. I'm overwhelmed. I'm honored, all that kind of thing. But I had a full plate of work for February because I didn't think I was going to have to deal with any of this. I was thinking March. So I had to hop on the treadmill and really get a hold of my schedule to answer all these things. And oh gosh, now I have to do promos. And I hadn't signed up for Mastodon. So I guess I better get on Mastodon now. So I've got an Instagram. I signed up for Instagram. I'm normally not a huge social media person, but okay, I guess I have some promotion to do. So trying to keep up with all that. And of course, a lot of the promo stuff is time sensitive. So I had some late nights, at the desk grinding away. But I'm it's a little more on an even keel right now. I've still got, I've got work to do up till Aces, up till I hop in the car. But
do you have your Aces presentations ready to go? Because you're doing two.
Almost. I'm doing two. The Quad, our mastermind group, is the word you were looking for.
I didn't think you were a mastermind group. I thought explicitly I was told, well, we're not really a mastermind group, but we're kind of.
Well, we didn't. That's the whole that's a whole other presentation that's already up on YouTube.
Sure.
But we didn't start out as a mastermind group, but eventually realized that we are one, and so we
Okay.
present ourselves as that now. We speak about it and so on. So we've already had our meeting to talk about our panel and kind of a little bit. We presented that one before, the Act Like a Business. So we just kind of reviewed, and we each have our own little pieces to go over. So I think that one's pretty well set. We've got our slides and everything. I still need to review my speaker notes for my solo panel, which is Oops, Finding and Fixing Bloopers in Fiction. So I turned in my slides. I actually realized I wanted to make some changes to the slides, so I just sent an email off today. Can I still squeeze in a new version? So hopefully they'll let me squeak it in.
I'm sure they will.
Yeah. So yeah, just basically working on my behind the scenes stuff for my presentation.
Yeah, I think it's clever to do a session at copy editing conference that starts out oops, gives people right away. So let's first talk about, we could talk about that because I want to know what's in your presentation. We'll get a preview of it. ACES is in 2 weeks. Today's Tuesday, 2 weeks. Thursday, tomorrow, Wednesday, 2 weeks. Tomorrow night is the freelancer happy hour, which returns after a COVID absence. And it's here in Columbus, so makes it easier for me, not much traveling, just 4 miles up the road. But let's, so that's in a couple of weeks. The book, it seems like, I want to say that you said you've had a great reaction to it, and I've seen on social media, I mean, obviously we follow the same people, but I've seen people posting their pictures, hey, I got my book. It seems like it was a hole in the materials available, and it really sort of fills an obvious need. Is that true?
Yeah, it really was. I mean, it kind of started. I could tell you when the seed was planted. I had started doing presentations at conferences, and in one of my early ones, back when I don't do it so much anymore. I used to just cover all of copy editing fiction in an hour or 90 minutes. And I've learned since then that's really hard to do. But anyway, so I would start out my presentation like, well, why am I speaking about this? And I said, there really aren't any books out there that are dedicated strictly to copy editing fiction. There's little bits and pieces in various references. There's a little bit in the Copy Editor's Handbook, and there was a little bit in Copy Editing Practical Guide, and there's like little blog posts and articles and stuff all over the place. But there really wasn't, a tome that you could pick up that covered the whole subject. And someone in the group said, well, you should write it. I was like,
sure.
Don't know that I'm a writer, but that's a thought. And so it just kind of grew and grew. And at one conference, I remember Jeff Hart, if you know Jeff, he's a Canadian editor. He was at the session, and he was following me around the conference going, write the book. So he was a big cheerleader. So I started thinking, well, maybe I could do it, because I had some blog posts and I had extensive speaker notes from my presentations. And I thought, well, I've got about 8,000 words here already in just written stuff, plus a big outline.
That's half a book.
That's half a book. The book in your hands, it came out, I had a goal of 50,000 words, and it came in around 58. So they let me go over a little bit. And
this is 58,000 words. Okay.
That's 58,000 words.
Lots of good ones.
So originally I had, the plan was I was going to publish it with copy editing with Aaron Brenner and Laura Poole. And I had some conversations with Aaron about what form the book might take. But I really struggled with, again, carving out the time to write a book, because, I have bills to pay and clients to satisfy. Right. And I'm just, somebody asked me the other day, so how do you handle your time management? And I said, well, if I ever figure it out, I'll let you know. So I had talked to Aaron about that, and then, copy editing dissolved and was sold to ACES. So then I was going to talk to Jake Poitier, Dr. Freelance, and I actually was on a trip to Arizona where he lives, and we sat down there and had a chat. And he was like, sure, whenever you got a manuscript, let me know. And I was like, okay. And I struggled so much with, and again, because I don't naturally write. I mean,
Right.
it's not something I'm driven to do, but I do have this information in my head that I wanted to get out. So the real birth of the book was when I gave a presentation on, it was actually the full deal of copyediting fiction at the EFA conference in Chicago in August of 2019. And unbeknownst to me, Mary Lahr, a senior editor at the U Chicago Press, was in my session. And she was watching my session, and apparently she was thinking to herself, gee, I wonder if she'd be interested in writing a book. And she came up to me afterward and introduced herself. We had a little chat, and she said, we should talk sometime. And I said, okay, that's cool. She didn't really say about what. And then later on, I found out that after my session, she was having lunch with Marilyn Schwartz, co-author of the Copy Editor's Handbook, who had also been in the session. And Marilyn said to Mary, you should get her to write a book. And Mary said, I'm way ahead of you.
Excellent.
So
and it wasn't that intimidating because you at least had the groundwork.
Yeah. And so so Mary and I had a phone call I think it was September, and we chat about this and that, and like she's got family up by me and so on. And I had told her about, I thought about writing a book and I keep wanting to get at it, but I just can't find the time. And I really want to do it. And she's like, well, you could do it the way you're thinking about, try to kind of self-publish or something like that. Or, we could talk about, you can submit a book proposal. And I was like, okay. And Mary was great. You talk about, well, if you want to have a book, you have to submit it to agents and you have to sell it. You have to convince someone to buy your book. And well, Mary already wanted it. It wasn't even written. So she just basically shepherded me through the entire process. She said, "Oh, nice. Here's a sample proposal that's similar to what we might like you to do. Here's the points I want you to hit. These are the topics we think you should cover." And then I turned it in, and she found the reviewers, and reviewer feedback came back, and she said, "Okay, here are the 3 reviewer comments, and here's the highlights of what I think you need to respond to, and here's what I think you don't need to worry about." And she just walked me through the entire thing, which was great because I've never been on that side of production. I'm a copy editor, proofreader. I'm at the tail end, right before it goes to production. I've never had to deal with acquisitions or developmental or anything like that. So it was really educational to be an author for a change.
It was more than like 3.5 years really of the whole process. I mean, not before that, you had been working on it for a while, so it may go on beyond that, but it was 3.5 years work after you talked to Chicago.
Yeah. Now the years for me, and I'm sure for a lot of people after 2020, I mean, 2020 is pretty clear in our heads, I think, but 21 and 22 and now 23, they're just kind of all this big mishmash, right? So it's hard to remember what happened in what years, but so I signed the contract in April of 2020, and then I had a year-long deadline, so I had to submit my initial manuscript April 1st of 2021, and then it went out for review, and it came back toward the end of May. We had another conversation where I basically had to revamp a lot of stuff because we decided, this chapter needs to go, and you need to flesh this stuff out a little more. And they were hoping to release it in 2022, but that wasn't really going to happen. So, or was it? I don't know. I'm getting confused. Was it fall of 2021 or spring of 2022? Anyway, so there were several rounds of revision.
Right.
So
nice.
it ended
nice
up being.
You had that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're happy with the current state?
I'm very happy with it. Although I have to say, I mean, I'm still finding things like, oh, I wish I'd have put this in. And, oh, I left that out. But I guess that's maybe for the second edition.
Right. Right. Have you heard of the terrible typos yet? Anything come up?
I found a slight error that was completely my fault, and I'm not even going to tell you what it is. It's not consequential. It's not in the words. someone pointed out some errors that they found in their ebook, but it turns out that that was just a formatting. I don't know
Ebook
what
thing.
it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, ebook thing. But yeah, so
But-
far I haven't heard of any. I'm sure they're in there.
Yeah, because we all know that everybody
They'll come
makes
out. Yeah,
mistakes.
just
Yeah.
little Easter eggs for everyone.
Yeah, exactly. So, so what I'm curious about, so you've been editing, freelance editing since the last century. I mean,
Oh God,
1995,
don't
right?
put it that way.
Well, I could say the last
Sure,
millennium,
sure.
but yeah.
Sure. Oh, right.
Yeah, well, a while, a few years longer than me in terms of
Yeah.
freelancing. But did you start out as, I think you started out in nonfiction. Maybe I'm just making stuff up here, but did you start out doing mainly nonfiction?
I did, and I really didn't have a career trajectory in mind. I just kind of fell into it. And the first clients that I got were in college textbooks. So I said, okay, I guess I'm going to do college textbooks. And so those were actually my bread and butter for my first, I don't know, 10, 15 years probably. And fiction was just kind of a side thing. And part of that was because I had only one fiction client for many years. And I kept, applying to places, and they just weren't biting. But at the time, the textbooks were paying pretty good money, and fiction not so much. But eventually, as the textbook work kind of got dried up and outsourced and that kind of thing, it was less lucrative and there was less of it. But meanwhile, the fiction was coming right along, and I started picking up a few more clients. So now it's about, I want to say it's about 50-50. Maybe a little more toward the fiction side. But yeah, I'll take a novel over like an economics textbook any day. And I know people for whom it's the other way around. But I'm really liking Graham right now.
Yeah, good. So what's the difference in approach? Well, let me ask you this about the authors you work with. Are there different sensibilities in a fiction author and an economics textbook author?
Well, and as I say in the book, so in nonfiction, you need to convey information, and it needs to be very clear. And usually, we apply house style or Chicago style or whatever fairly strictly. I need to ignore the chat.
Patty Boyd in the chat said, economics is fiction, not helpful. Patty.
So it can be very formulaic, and you have all the, like you have sidebars and questions and all that kind of thing. And it's very formulaic. And when I was doing textbooks, it was like, okay, you've got 38 chapters and they're coming in batches of 3 or 4, and you're working on it for 3 or 4 months. And after a while, you get into a groove and you learn how to handle all those different elements, and you got to make sure they all align and so on. So it's very structured. And in fiction, you just kind of throw a lot of that out the window. I mean, there are some things that are fairly consistent, but each story is its own style guide, really. Because there are different ways to tell a story and create a mood, and you've got pacing, you've got characters, and all the wild things that make up the human experience. You can't formulate that to tell a story, to express it. You have to have different ways of communicating, and that the author and the characters, they have to have their voice. And a sensitive fiction editor is going to recognize that and just go with the flow and just help the author tell the story the way they intend to tell it.
Right. But you still apply the style and a lot of the grammar, and probably a lot of loose grammar. Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's not a place for a prescriptivist. And I say that as a recovering prescriptivist, but I think that's something that comes with experience as an editor. You learn to let a lot of stuff go, and we don't like to be peevers. We don't want to apply the grammar hammer. We need to language is how people speak. We don't edit ourselves to conform to Chicago style. And that's
I do, but
yeah, well, yeah, you're the exception. You're the exception that proves the rule. So Go ahead.
So you enjoy the fiction editing more so, and if any of your nonfiction clients are watching, I'm sure that you enjoy working for them too. But you're
I
a bigger
do.
fan of the fiction. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I'm curious about the one thing I think is probably the similar is the fact checking. I mean, it's different kind of facts, but there's fact checking. People may assume it's fiction. We don't need to worry about facts. It's whatever somebody wants to make up. But how does that come into play?
Yeah, well, that's actually a little bit of a preview of the session I'm giving at ACES, the oops, finding and fixing bloopers in fiction, because you know, Twain said truth is stranger than fiction. You know, fiction has to make sense, otherwise, you know, have you ever been reading a book where something didn't make sense? You know, whether it's some special knowledge you have, and you just say that's not how that works, and it just, you know, you lose your trust in the author to tell the story. It pulls you out because you stop and go, wait a minute, is that how that really is? Or you know that it isn't, so that makes no sense. So yeah, you need to make sure that the sun is rising and setting at the right time of day and in the right place, and that when people travel from one place to another, that the times add up, and you know that people aren't repeating actions or repeating, you know, having repeated dialogue that isn't supposed to be, and things like that. So yeah, it needs to make sense, except of course if something has been deliberately made fictional for whatever purpose the author has, you know. So there's a dance involved.
I think do you, I don't know, do you do science fiction?
A lot, yeah.
Yeah, and that's something I think science fiction readers, they can believe faster than light travel. They can believe,
Yeah,
you know,
it has to be
whatever.
truthful to whatever the facts are in the story.
Mhm.
You know, there might be an imaginary world with a different kind of physics. They might have, you know, weeks that have 17 days in them. They might have, you know, different arrangements of planets, or you know, there's magic things and all kinds of things like that, and you just make note of that, and that becomes your fact resource. And if the author has provided that stuff, that world building information, all the better, because then you know what they were going for, and you can use that as a reference as well.
Yeah, yeah. What is I know the answer to this, but I've completely forgotten it. What is Featherschneider? Your company name?
So my last name is Schneider, and
Yes,
my
you know that.
husband's last name is Featherston.
Okay.
So when right after we got married, my sister started calling us the Featherschneiders, just for fun. I said, well, that's kind of goofy, you know, it's kind of fun. So we would, you know, people would address, you know, envelopes to us back when people wrote things in letters, you know, to the Featherschneiders, or, you know, we were known as the Featherschneiders. And a lot of people actually got to think that that was our last name, when it's not. We have different last names. And so when I was looking for a unique name for my business, I thought, well, why not Featherschneider? Because it's distinctive. It points out that yes, my spouse is part of my business because he does all that supportive stuff, you know, around the house, and you know, he built my wonderful desk, and he, you know, installs my air conditioner in the summertime, and you know, he cooks meals and takes care of the dogs, and so you know, he's just as much a business of the business as I am. And then one time I was in a workshop where we were talking about marketing your business, and the instructor saw my business name, and she said, you know, that's the perfect name for an editor, because a feather is like a quill, and Schneider, which I knew, is the German word for a tailor. So I tailor your writing. I was like, oh, why didn't I think of that?
Wonderful.
So
hey,
how clever is that?
I have to call up your website again. You use a feather, right, in your? No, you don't. You're
It's
kind
like
of
a little swoop. Yeah.
Swoop. Yeah, swoop. Could be a feather.
It's a
But
little
okay.
swoop. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
That's
slightly
very clever.
suggestive. Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned your dogs, and I was hoping, because you say in your bio that you teach your dog silly tricks, and I said, let's do a segment on the show of but you said they're not. You said they're not very. They're not particularly.
They're they're not camera friendly, at least for a live thing. I would hate to spend time doing that. But if you want to check them out, I can say that the two that I have right now do have their own Facebook pages. So if you check out Therapy Dog Josie and look for the Springer Spaniel, and my other dog is Alice the Land Shark. And so
Alice the Land Shark.
Alice the Land Shark. So they have their own pages, and you can check them out there.
Okay, we're definitely going to do this. So I also asked you about the quad. So we call it a mastermind group, and it's called the quad. There are not 4 people. There are is it
7.
did it come from like a college quad?
So
let's meet.
That was kind of what we decided we were going to say, because we started out as hex because there were 6 of us, and then some people joined, some people left, and we ended up with 7, and we started calling it the quad, maybe because I think we went from 6 down to 4, and then we added on another 4, and then 1 left, so we ended up with 7. But I think the original 4, we said, quad, but then when we became 7, like, well, quad doesn't work anymore. Maybe we need to be something else, and we thought, no, it's like a college quad. It's like a place where we gather.
There you go.
So, yeah.
Okay. So and I'll forget somebody, but who are the 7 members in your group, the quad?
Okay, so you know what, we've talked about this. We often have trouble thinking of who all we are. So
you forget with somebody.
You forget somebody. There's Adrienne Montgomery up in Canada.
Right.
There is Erin Brenner. I'm counting on my fingers. Laura Poole.
Right.
Laura Poole. Lori Paxamatis, who is in the chat here today, and Sarah Gray. And no, I miscounted. And of course, Catherine O'More Clough.
Catherine O'More Clough, I was going to say.
I think I counted 8.
Amy
I don't know
J
how
Schneider.
I did that. I must have listed somebody twice. Yeah.
So I mean, this is like it's a superstar group of, people who are, I shouldn't overstate it, but those are people who are known in our community as editors who give back, who present, who talk about editing, editors. So what's give us the dirt. What goes on in your secret meetings with a quad?
Well, we don't really we have a monthly check-in. We call it Chicken. Where we just we talk about, and it's whoever's available. We talk about, how did you meet your goals for last month? How are things looking for this month? What can we do to support you? That kind of thing. And so we all just kind of checking in. How are you doing? What's going on with you? Mostly professional, but sometimes it's personal stuff. And then we have an ongoing chat. It used to be in Facebook chat. Now it's in Slack. Slack is the place to be.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And so
I was
we
happy
keep
to hear
adding,
that you had moved. Yeah.
Yeah. So we just kind of dip in and out of Slack all day. We've got all kinds of channels, much like the Copy Desk Slack, where I think I was telling you earlier today, we do have. You had asked about if I could give some insider scoop on the quad. And I said, well, we do have a cone of silence in the quad, and we even have a Slack channel for it. So if we have something that's super duper secret we want to share, that's where it goes, under the cone of silence. Although there is an overarching cone over everything. What happens in the quad stays in the quad.
Right.
But we do also have one of my favorite channels I think it's one of the newest ones, is we have a channel called Nap Chat. Nap Chat. A lot of our channels are about go-getting stuff. Like we have Author's Corner and Speaker's Corner, where we talk about things we're writing or presentations we're giving. But sometimes you just need a nap, and so we'll just post in there. Oh man, I'm gonna go take a nap. I am beat. I just need a couple hours. Or I just woke up from this great nap and I'm so energized and it's great. So
that's all that goes on in there. Just reviews of the latest nap, or the need for a nap.
Right. Nap reviews. And it's funny because I started the channel and I was just going to call it Naps. And I was with my mother at the time, Lord love her, she's 78 years old. And she said, well, you should call it Nap Chat. And I was like, oh, you're right. I have to change it. Okay. So it's Nap Chat.
Yeah. How important is that group let me make that more specific. You were part of that group, I think, during the entire evolution of the book.
Mhm.
What did your cohorts do for you, and how important were they to sort of keeping you on track and keeping you going?
Oh, the book absolutely would not exist without the quad, and I've told them that. Because it's just such a wonderful mutual support group, you know. And when we start feeling our imposter syndrome, we buck each other up. They help keep me on track. They all contributed something, whether it was material for the book or conversations about it or ideas about what to put in, what to leave out. Laura Poole proofread it, and just daily support for everything,
I
and
was going to
also
ask you
just think
about.
it's
Sorry, go on.
oh, I was just to say the mutual inspiration too. I mean, these other 6 women, they do so many amazing things, and I'm just in awe, and I'm amazed that it's part of the imposter syndrome thing. It's like, wow, you guys let me into your group. You guys do so much. So there's a lot of things that I would not have done without their encouragement, inspiration, support. I wouldn't be here. I would not have a book. I would not be doing presentations, I don't think, to the extent that I have been. So they really we lift each other up. And that's the real benefit.
Well,
And they really become dear friends.
Yeah, I found that I've always drawn sort of inspiration as freelancers. We don't have an office. We don't have people to sort of hang out with who speak our language, who we can bounce things off. And that's the first thing I found after leaving newspapers was I needed something, and I turned to Twitter and met a whole bunch of people on Twitter, and that became my community. And I'm not much there anymore, but I'm in a couple of different Slack groups, and I think it's just really valuable to. I mean, some people might want to work alone and not sort of interact with others, but I find it very valuable to have that sort of constant cohort, just to talk about, sometimes to talk about editing, often just to talk about whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
You
Absolutely.
and the mastermind concept. I mean, there's sort of I suppose there's a way to do it. There's like a list of tips and things like that, but it doesn't have to be. It can be
Yeah,
whatever you want, right?
it can be whatever you want. I mean, some are local groups where they are able to meet in
Mm-hmm.
person. Some they take all different forms, and I'm the odd one out in our group because I'm the only one in the central time zone. So they'll say, okay, we're having one of our Slack channels is Power Hour. So say, oh, I really did get some stuff done today. So Power Hour at 2 p.m. So I always have to translate. Well, then for me, that's at 1 p.m. So
Right.
whoever's available has stuff to get done. It's okay. We're all going to buckle down. And then at the end of the hour, we're going to all report on what we got done.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Good. And you said, Laura, I was going to ask you about the editing process because you're an editor, and to put something this 200 pages of your thoughts together and then hand it to somebody else and say, look at this. I wonder what that was like. You said Laura did the proofreading. Did you have a copy editor
Yeah.
also?
Yeah, the copy editor was Erin DeWitt. She was provided by University of Chicago Press.
Mm-hmm.
So
okay. Now that you've named her,
I've named her.
What was
yes.
that process? What was that process like?
It was interesting, and I had to remind myself that yes, it's okay to stet, just like we always tell ourselves. Our authors are allowed to stet things. I'm allowed to stet things. She did make a lot of really good suggestions and corrections. So yeah, it was cool to be on that side of it. And Laura caught some good stuff too. She was actually returning the favor because I actually copy edited her book about work-life balance.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, we all, and I had someone else lined up to do the indexing, but she was unable to do it. So Janet Werner did the index, and she did a very nice job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's a labor of many people.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I have not found any typos myself in it. So, and it looks, yeah. Not that I would. I don't know that I read for. I mean, I suppose I can't help noticing things when I come by them, but
Oh,
usually I
they're in
try to
there. We
avoid.
all know they're in there.
Yeah,
They are definitely
right,
in there.
right. I had a so I did a thing today. So I asked you about fiction, nonfiction. You said it's like 50-50 or thereabouts. I had a thing today where, I mean, you know, if you have a bunch of different clients, some want the Oxford comma, some don't. Some are um, religious about it, some are easygoing about it. And I had one today that was absolutely no to an Oxford comma. You don't need a serial comma, just about anything. And so I inserted a comma, and I got in a proof, and I got a note back and said, "Well, we follow AP style. We don't." I know that, but that's and it's hard to sort of I mean, I need the and it's a matter for a copywriter. You need to slow down and think about what is the style guide for this particular client. But to go from, I wonder, to go from fiction to nonfiction, is that like really is it difficult, or do you manage that
Not
okay?
really.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I mean, the manuscript looks different. It's a different feel. I mentioned economics, and the time that I knew it was time to get out of economics is for some ridiculous reason, I accepted 2 economics manuscripts at the same time.
Oh boy.
They were both copy edits, and I'm not a fan of economics to begin with, but at that time I was still kind of in that mode where I felt like, oh, I have to take everything that comes along the pike.
Yeah.
And it was just, that was the end of my economics editing career. I said, never again. So I wasn't able to keep them separate. But for things like you mentioned the Oxford comma, and I'm very strong pro Oxford comma. And when I do get an author or a publisher that says we don't use the Oxford comma, I actually go through, I run a search and replace, and not search and replace, search and highlight. And I actually highlight comma space and comma space or, so that I can check each one, because otherwise they're going to slip right by me. Because I expect to see them, so it doesn't jump out at me when they're there when they're not supposed to be. So little tech tip there. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And highlighting makes sense, because if you try to actually search and go through one by one, you realize very quickly that there are so many that are not Oxford commas. They're just comma and. Yeah.
Right.
Huh. All right. Well, that's good. I'm taking that away from this discussion. I'm going to start doing that. That's an excellent idea. I think we have a question. If you have any questions for Amy on her hair, on her dogs, on her book,
about dog hair.
Dog hair, yeah. I'll ask you about your hair in a minute. Where was it? Oh, ask in the room. Put query in the room and ask in the room. We'll try to get to all the questions, and I think we have at least one ready to go.
We do. This one's from Aaron. Aaron, let's have it.
Well, did Aaron slip out?
Sorry, I just had to figure out how to unmute.
You've done this before. Aaron was, for a long time, was assistant producer for that word chat. So she knows her way around.
Yes, but I'm on a tablet and suddenly everything's weird.
Oh, I see.
I know the answer to this, but I think it's interesting. Or I think I know the answer to this. But Amy, I wonder if you would talk about, I know there are different, you went through different levels of editing. There was the beta readers. I know Mary looks at the manuscript and makes recommendations, but would you talk about how those different levels of editing inspired your writing, helped your writing along? I think it's really useful for us as editors to hear from an author, the different levels of editing and how they can affect the manuscript and how helpful they can be.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was a little scary to hand the first draft off to. I had several, in addition to the readers that were provided by the press, I had separate readers of my own. I got input from a former managing editor from a major publisher. In fact, she was the first person that hired me to edit fiction. And I said, would you review my manuscript and give me feedback? Someone found me a fiction author to read it and give feedback, because I do want fiction authors to maybe have my book on their shelf and review it so that they know what their copy editor is thinking and doing and what things they might be looking for and asking. I did have a fellow fiction editor, Lori Paxamatis, also reviewed it. I had several authenticity and sensitivity readers look through it, both ones that I found and ones that the press had look at it. So, and I also, I did have a questionnaire that I sent out to several fiction editors to ask about their process and their approach. So it was really good for me to get out of my head, because I didn't want it to be just, this is how I do it. It needs to be broader than that. It needs to encompass the experience of more than just me. So I hope that I've, enriched it that way by getting the feedback from all those different people. So that was the big picture stuff, from the anonymous peer reviewers and from the readers that I had. Those all just enriched it so much. And then, of course, you get down into the nitty gritty, the stuff that we as editors are familiar with, the copy editing and the proofreading. Indexing is like some kind of sorcery. I don't even know how that works. But I'm glad that someone else did it and it wasn't me, and someone who knew what they were doing.
You said that when you said you did some rewriting based on those early sort of readers taking a look at the book. What kind of things was it? Were you like, did you find yourself on the wrong track, or did you like just say, oh, there's some cool stuff I didn't mention?
Well, the main thing that came down is I'd like everyone to take a moment of silence for the former chapter 3.
My gosh, it
because
goes right from 2 to 4. Okay.
Yeah, right. So the original chapter 3 was a lot of kind of technical stuff, and it kind of, they made me realize I had a lot of favorite things in there, and chapter 3 originally made the book lose a lot of momentum. Like I had talked about the mindset and the workflow, and then I got bogged down in all this technical stuff, and they said, no, that needs to be somewhere else. So I basically just blew it up into a million pieces, and I put, some of it became appendixes, some of it became little sections in other chapters, some of it just got pulled all together, and I saved it for maybe a future blog post. Some of it got condensed, so it just kind of got utterly destroyed. So I had to kill my darling. Even in a reference book, you still have to kill your darlings once in a while. But it really did make the book stronger. And the other thing that bothered me about killing chapter 3 was that I originally had 10 chapters, and I was like, oh, that's a nice round number. So I had to come to terms with, now I'm only going to have 9, and it wasn't even even like there's 2 chapters in part 1, and then 4 chapters in part 2, and then 3 chapters in part 3. So it's kind of a jumble, but that's okay.
Well, it's not fiction. It is what it should be for the purpose, I would say.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what, as a fiction editor, was the process helpful? Did you learn some things from going through that process that you now bring to your?
I did. I changed some of my processes actually based on, it's kind of like they say the way to learn something is to teach it, and I think also the way to learn something is to write about it. And when I was trying to explain why I do things, I was like, well, why do I do it that way? Actually, I've been doing it that way for 10 years or whatever, and maybe it doesn't really make sense anymore. So I've changed things, and even there are things that I describe in the book that I've changed since then, because it's just, you need to keep developing your process and getting rid of what doesn't serve you, and find things that work better. So
yeah, interesting. All right, we have a couple more questions.
We do. This will be a fun one from Catherine, if you want to unmute and ask your question.
Hi, Amy. I think what struck me about your book was just how passionate you are about words. So of the 58,000 words, which one was your favorite?
Oh my gosh. Well, I have two in mind right away, but they're kind of little Easter eggs, so I don't want to say what they are. You have to find them
Oh,
for
wow.
yourself. And I'm going to say that when you find them, you'll know.
Huh.
And with a little bit of thought, you might be able to figure out what they are. But I have to say that my number one favorite word in the whole book is they.
They.
Because we can't say enough about they. And I mean, Gail has her list of, when I put her in the footnote, it was something like 40 resources, all expounding on singular they. And she just mentioned, was it in LinkedIn, I think, that it's over 100 now. She has over 100 sources. And so now,
Gail Spivak.
Yeah,
Spivak.
Gail Spivak. And so
yeah.
I can never remember how to pronounce it. I'm sorry, Gail.
Spivak, yeah. You want to say Spivak,
Yeah.
but it's Spivak, yeah.
Okay. So I'm happy to have been another voice in favor of the singular they, because its time is well overdue to be accepted and embraced.
I just saw on the index, I don't know why my mind jumped to that, but I see sex scenes 148.
Yep.
Do we talk about that? Is that a difficult thing for a fiction editor? It's probably a much more difficult thing for a nonfiction editor.
Right. Well, the first thing is that you don't have to edit sex scenes if you don't want to. If that makes you uncomfortable, you're certainly always free to turn down, just like economics in nonfiction. If you don't want to do erotica or, intense romance type stuff, you don't have to. But if you are going to edit them, again, it has to make sense. People can't have 3 arms or put their hands somewhere when their other hands are occupied elsewhere, or take off the same garment twice, or whatever it happens to be. And so it's an awkward thing, but sometimes you have to, picture what's happening and make sure that it's not, you're not playing some weird form of Twister, or, that doesn't go there, or whatever. So yeah, they need editing just as much as anything else.
Right, absolutely. Another question, I think, Heather.
Yes. Next up is our Mary Norris.
Oh my goodness. Hello, Mary.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great.
I will know when I see your book, the answer to this question, but right now I'm curious what you used for models. Are you a big fiction reader? Did you use classic fiction, short stories, Henry James, Shirley Jackson, or did you use people you've edited yourself?
So the examples that I have are there. I don't have like whole paragraphs or anything with examples of before and after or anything like that. I mean, it's just like little phrases. They're all little snippets of typical constructions that I see. So none of it is really pulled from anything in particular. I did borrow, just for reference, I asked a couple of editors I know who also write fiction. I said, do you have some pieces that I could just kind of look at in case I need something to start with? Because I'm not a fiction writer. I don't know how people write fiction. It's magic to me. So they let me just have their pieces in front of me, and I would just kind of use them as inspiration to create the examples. But yeah, so it's all made up, and the points don't matter.
Good answer.
Yeah, thank you, Mary. And you'll get your hands on the book in a couple of weeks. Mary's going to be at the ACES conference here in Columbus, and you're going to do a book signing, right? We're going to at the
just found out. I just heard from the press they're going to have me at the U of Chicago press table. That's where I'll be signing. When? That's not been determined yet. Most likely probably after my session that I give, and probably some other times too.
Yeah, probably at a time when Mary is not signing, so we don't have lines intersecting.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're going to be, and you'll be. I think we have a copy of this for the freelancer happy hour as a door prize.
Yep. And I will sign it to. Yeah, I will sign it to the person who wins, and the same for there will be one in the silent auction as well.
The silent auction Thursday night. Excellent. That benefits the Ed Fund, and then you'll be signing a lot. You said you're going to bring Sharpies and be ready.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, quickly, tell us about the hair. So, I mean to put you on the spot. I mean, but it's it's a fascinating phenomenon. I know at previous conferences there was usually like a group picture of everybody had interesting hair. When did that start? You were certainly an early adopter.
I guess so. I mean, I always thought it'd be fun to have, wild colored hair, but oh gosh, it's expensive to go to the salon and everything. But I really owe it to our very own Heather, because
Oh,
she
really?
told me what brand she uses. Because I tried
Aha.
a couple other brands and they didn't really do anything. She said, "Oh, you got to use this stuff," and so that's what I use. And it comes in a tube like toothpaste, and you just brush it on and let it sit and rinse it out, and it stays pretty well depending on the color. Different colors fade at different rates.
Uh,
So it's all Heather's fault, really.
well, I think Heather has inspired a lot of people. Heather, you
Oh
should
yeah.
let's see your hair so we can
Mm.
compare them.
A little bit orange.
A little
Yep.
bit orange, yeah.
Orange is the
Yeah.
color. The
Uh-huh.
teal one
Heather does
is
her.
like, ooh, no, teal, like orange for life.
Yeah.
Teal is
Heather
just
has her own.
temporary.
I've seen it. Heather has her own custom blend. It's like, I don't want to give away your formula, but it's not just straight out of the tube. She has multiple colors that she blends in exactly the right proportions
Mhm.
to get that striking color.
Gotta have
So
all
you
that
said
exciting stuff.
you said I thought it was interesting. I mean, didn't really think about it. It makes sense. But you said you're not a fiction writer. Um, but you read a lot of fiction. I mean, you edit a lot of fiction.
Mhm.
Have you ever had a go at it, doing some
To
writing?
write fiction?
Yeah.
No. And in fact, I'm gonna let you in on my dirty little secret.
All right, good. That's
I
what I've been
don't
waiting for.
I don't read for pleasure anymore.
Uh,
And it's not that I don't love the idea, but number one, I edit so many hours a day, and when I'm away
yeah.
from the desk, I want to do something else. And there's so many other things to do. I want to go out with my dogs. I want to, cook. I want to talk to people. I want to, do all the other things.
Mhm.
And really, I'm sad to say, even though I've got a whole house full of Dead Tree books that I have not read yet or that I would love to reread, my eyes have just gotten so used to reading on the screen. I've got all my screen optimized font nice and big,
Yeah.
and I sat down sometimes with the paper book, and I'm like, oh God,
Yeah.
I can't see what's going on. And
I've taken to
I
doing
read a little bit here and
audiobooks.
there.
Yeah, I've
Yeah,
taken to doing audio just to, because then, rest my eyes. I don't have that constant thing. I think Mary's books, I didn't read either of them on paper, but, and the cool thing about it in the audiobook is that you hear Mary Norris in your earphones when you're, or Corey Stamper's book I did on audiobook. And I do a mix of fiction and nonfiction on audio, but I'm the same way. I mean, you spend so much time dealing with the words
yeah,
that a lot of my copy editor cohort will, talk about, oh, this book and that book, and they're on top of
yeah,
whatever the trends are. And I've never been like that.
yeah. And I do get my fiction fix just from what I read, because let's face it, I work for
Oh, sure.
publishers and I work on a lot of bestsellers, so I read some quality stuff for my work, and I get paid to read this stuff. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And the other thing is
Fun.
a lot of editors listen to music while they're editing, and I
Mm.
can't, because I'm such a music lover. I'm not that other people aren't, of course, but my brain just grips onto, and it can be instrumental, it can be in a foreign language, whatever. My brain just grabs onto that rhythm and it disrupts my editing. So I have to work
Yeah.
in silence or white noise or whatever. So when I'm out of the office and say I'm driving in the car, I got to have the tunes on because I'm a music person. So that's when I get to enjoy my music.
Mhm.
So
Right. And
yeah.
you also have like you have a setup of four, famously you have four monitors. I just have
Mhm.
three. Now when I do Zoom, when I do the show, I turn off the two side monitors because there were so many times that I'd be watching the video back and I'm looking off to the side, looking like I'm ignoring the person speaking because
Yep.
I'm looking at, the one-sided image. So I turn them off now. So I'm just focused on you. I've got some notes and I've got you right there. Anyway, sorry. So I have 3 monitors usually, but you have 4 monitors, 2 of them vertical. I don't know if we can see that in your, let's see, is the
Oh, yeah.
top one, right? Yeah. That's your setup.
Yep,
Is that what you're
yep.
looking at right now?
Yes, that's extremely meta. Yes, that's exactly what I look. Except that these 3 are shut off now, just like you say. I turn them off as well.
As the big main one is your main, and then these
Yeah,
are
this
sort
is
of
this
extras.
one. This is my primary, the one that it boots up on, and then these are extra.
All right. What goes on those? Cartoons, television.
Yeah. Well, the rightmost one is where most of my internet stuff lives. So that's where my email and browser and Slack and all that stuff, social media. That's all on the right, because generally if I'm editing, I'm either facing this screen or I might be facing one of these 2 in the middle. So that's kind of off to the side, and I can ignore it until I need to pay attention to it.
Mhm.
So yeah, so the 3 on the left are my workspace, and then the one on the right is for the internet.
Okay. You said you said among your hobbies are the finger spaniels, and you say you also sing. What's you sing to yourself in your office, or do you sing in a group? Or?
I would love to sing with a group in a band or anything, and I've done that a little bit off and on over the years. I was in a duo with a guy who had a guitar, and we sang like old folk songs. And I've got a friend down the road who he likes to do kind of world music type stuff, and he has original songs that he writes, and we've played together for a while. We called ourselves Cabin Fever.
Good.
Right now, it's kind of
Good
silly,
Wisconsin
but
name.
right. Well, we live out in the country too, so we get the cabin fever around this time of year. But right now, the only real gigs that I get are singing the national anthem at special events. So I've got a hockey team that I sing for, and our local minor league baseball, and our dog club show every January. I sing for them, and I've done it like I need to check my sheet, but it's over 40 times, I think.
Wow. So, do you ever forget the word?
Yeah. Never.
Somebody asked in the chat, we're ignoring the chat, of course, but somebody asked, they didn't catch what was on the far right monitor.
That's all my internet stuff. So my Thunderbird, my email and browsers and Slack and social media, all that stuff.
Yeah. Okay. All right, we are getting low on time. Actually, we're just about out of time, but it's been a quick and fun, great hour. Maybe
It's been great.
Before we go, maybe there's a way we can get you to prepare something for your presentation at ACES or at the Freelancer Happy Hour that you could sing a little bit to.
I'd have to get pretty happy to do that.
The national, well, it's a happy hour. The national anthem before to kick off the happy hour, maybe. Maybe we should do maybe at the silent auction. You could say, a song from Amy.
I know there has been talk of having an editor's talent show at ACES where everyone can participate and do, somebody could juggle or, do a poetry reading or, do gymnastics or whatever you do.
I could juggle and do gymnastics and read poetry at the same time. You've been to CIEP, and they do. There's a musical group that performs regularly at their conferences, or at least they did years ago.
I have not been to CIEP yet, but I am going this year. Yeah, this year, Glasgow or bust. Yep.
Oh, is it Glasgow? I'm going to go to Glasgow in a couple of months, but I'm not going to. When is it this year?
September.
September, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll pave the way. I'll check it out.
There you go.
Let you know what's
Leave the light on for us. Mm-hmm.
Yes. All right. Well, it's been a pleasure. It's been great, everybody. Thank you for the questions and thank you for the chit chat in the room. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun talking to you, Amy. Good luck with the book. It's going to be. I'm just going to see you in a couple of weeks. So.
Thank you so much for having me. This is fun, just real casual, just chatting and talking shop. It's great.
And thank you for the past hour, and we will see you soon.
Nice. Thank you, Mark.